Want to do well in the public speaking course this semester? Over the next few minutes, I'm going to run through some of the tips for success that you'll need to perform well in the public speaking course. Whether this is your first online course or your fifth or your sixth, there are some things to keep in mind when you're taking a course online. Mainly, that there are greater degrees of freedom and flexibility in how you complete your work and when you submit your work. However, with that comes greater degrees of responsibility and a stronger need for self accountability. Make sure that you log into the course site often, at least 2 to 3 times per week. Read the announcements I send out at the start of the week and on Thursdays of each week. And also keep an eye on due dates. Utilize the Canvas to-do list and make sure that you're staying on track to complete your assignments on time. Relative to the public speaking course itself, for each speech that you complete, you'll be assessed using a rubric that's been predefined by the department. I will use this rubric to grade you on a number of different things related to your delivery, related to adhering to some of the guidelines related to speech delivery. So there will never be any surprises in how you will be assessed in this course. You will have access to these rubrics from the start of the semester, and part of your process in rehearsal should be to review these rubrics to make sure that you're following the guidelines necessary for success in these speeches. What you're seeing here are some of the various criteria that I'll be using to assess you throughout the semester. This is pretty hard to read, so don't take any time to read it right now. Again, this will be available inside of the Canvas course site for your review. Use this to your advantage and be fully aware of how you're being scored throughout the semester on each of the 4 major speeches. In fact, aside from just reading the Canvas course and the rubrics, read everything. Again, I will be using announcements and sending announcements throughout the semester. There is a plethora of information in the Canvas course site. All the details you need to be successful are available at your disposal in Canvas. Very often, in terms of performance, students will sometimes forget to read certain things. All of that can be avoided if you just read the Canvas course site. There are so many details there for you, and everything you need to know to get an A is available in the course. Also, rehearse. One of the biggest mistakes I see is that students will often just not rehearse their speeches. They'll just wing it, and often that comes through in delivery. It'll be very obvious to see that the content was not rehearsed, that you're not as familiar as you need to be with the content that you're delivering. And sometimes that will come through in the form of nerves, in the form of poor eye contact, in the form of a shift in your cadence, in your delivery. So just make sure that you rehearse your content, be familiar with what you're looking to deliver, and make sure that you are well prepared for delivery. But don't use scripts for your final delivery. I'm actually ad-libbing this right now. To complete this particular video, I produced an outline, I produced some slides, I reviewed those slides before I delivered this content. But what I'm not doing is reading a script word for word. When we do this, it often affects the way in which we deliver the material. We tend to be less vocal, and there's some less vocal variation in our delivery. We tend to get very monotone when we're reading directly off a script. So make sure that you develop an outline of sorts, but don't necessarily script everything word for word. Have you ever felt engaged by watching someone read something off a piece of paper? Because I certainly haven't. Use an outline. Don't use a word for word script in your final delivery. Engage your audience. Very often, students will choose audience members who are sometimes not engaged. They're doing other things. They're driving, they're reading, they're sleeping. I've seen some crazy things with audience engagement. So make sure that you're engaging the 4 audience members that you select. Make sure that they're involved in the speech. Use the attention getter at the beginning of the speech to ping them for some information. Involve them in the speech itself. Keep them engaged throughout. And again, try to choose audience members who you know will be supportive, who will not be doing 12 other things while watching or not watching your speech. Figure out the technology ahead of time. Very often I'll receive frantic messages from students at the very last minute on the Sunday night that the speech is due. I can't figure out Zoom, my camera's not working, I don't know how to download Zoom onto my device, Panopto's not functioning as it should. Figure out the technology ahead of time, inform your audience of how to access the speech if you're using Zoom. figure out the camera situation, if you're using Panopto. The idea being that nothing is more nerve-wracking than trying to fumble with that technology the night the speech is due, while your audience very often is just sitting and watching you. And if you're looking for more help, more support, and more assistance throughout the semester, stay in touch. I'll host weekly office hours every Thursday night where you can stop by and ask any questions that you may have. And before each major speech, I will schedule a rehearsal slots where you can sign up for time to come through and get some support on running through the speech with me. And during that time, I'll use the rubric to assess you that I'll use when I grade your final delivery. So please stop by anytime. Know that you are supported, and I am here to assist you with anything you may need. Welcome to the course, and I look forward to working with all of you this semester.